Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Taylor Hughes. Taylor is an amazing magician and storyteller who has gone about his magic career in a unique way. He talks about not only how he writes the magic in his act, not only how he writes books in his act, but also how he manages to go viral and how things like social media and making Amazon specials make a difference in his business, and how you should think about creating material for your act and throwing it all away and starting again. This was an incredible episode, not only because it was full of information like how to write things that actually resonate with other people, but also full of inspiration of things that you can learn how to do and you can strive for in your magic business and magic career. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Please enjoy a lovely conversation with the one and only Taylor Hughes. Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and we are here with the one and only Taylor Hughes. Taylor, how you doing?
I'm doing so good, buddy. Thanks for letting me crash your party here.
Thanks for coming, and really excited to talk about so much. I mean, aside from the fact that you are just a awesome performer, I get the privilege for this podcast of following my interest and interviewing the people that do the things that I'm like most interested in at the time. And I got a chance to see you do a handful of different things at Magic Live, and I was just like, yeah, this is awesome. This is the kind of thing that I want to talk about. So excited to talk about it, excited to get into it.
Thank you, man. And I've been listening to the podcast. I love these conversations, and we were talking a little bit about this beforehand, but there's very little opportunities for other performers to hear kind of like the green room conversations, the stuff we talk about when we're just hanging out having coffee, and the things that help us feel like we're not alone in this weird business. So thank you for making a space for us to all learn and grow and also not feel alone.
Of course, and I appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening and being a part of this. Let's start way back at the very beginning. How did you even get started in magic?
Yeah, so I mean, typical story. I got a magic kit when I was a kid. But that started because I was my stepdad's best friend who lived with us for a little while. He was a stand-up comedian and was just the funniest dude. Like at dinner, he would always be, doing little gags and bits. And my mom asked him, she said, "Can you do a show for Taylor's 7th birthday?" And he's thinking, I can't do stand-up for 7-year-olds. But he got his start off doing magic. And so he put together a little magic show and did it for my birthday, and I was just hooked. Like from that second, I said, this is what I want to do. So I started playing with it right away.
It's so awesome. I have this theory about magic, which is that the reason why we all have that same story is not because an uncle or friend or whatever doing magic is like the most amazing thing, but instead it's just like, if there's a type of person that has that little bit of analytic and little bit of entertainment and whatever in them, and they see magic, they're hooked. So it's not that like the magic was the most amazing magic. It's just like the person is the type of person that has that engineering-y, problem-solving-y, but also funny or whatever type brain, and then they see magic and then they're hooked.
It's so true, man. It's funny. My dad used to take us every Friday night. He would take us to the local video store, and back in the 80s, and we would rent. We could each pick out a movie to rent, and I for about 3 months straight, every Friday night, I would rent the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller music video.
Wow.
Because I was obsessed with like the special effects of how they created this world and turned these people into, different creatures. And I would watch it over and over. And then when I saw a magic show, I just couldn't believe it was like you were doing special effects in the movie, but like right in my living room. And I thought, I got to learn how to do this.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what happened from there? Like, you're like, okay, I like magic. Maybe you started playing with it. Like, did you start pursuing it seriously? Were you just toying around? What did that look like?
Yeah, for the first few years, just going to every magic shop. Anytime we'd be on a family trip, I'd pull out the yellow pages and try to find out.
And where in the States did you grow up?
I grew up in Southern California. So I grew up in Azusa, which is about 35 minutes from the Magic Castle in Hollywood. Yeah. And so when I was a kid, luckily we had like 3 or 4 local magic shops in our area. And my parents were just they've always been this way with my siblings as well, where like if you show a spark of interest, they would just like pour gasoline on it.
Yeah, that's great.
And so they would never get annoyed to like drive me to a magic shop or take me to a friend's house who was into card tricks, and we'd get to jam and stuff. And then when I was a teenager, I was 16, I auditioned to join the Magic Castle Junior Society. And that's kind of when it went a little crazy, because it was like all of a sudden there was other people who were wanting this on a professional level, and it just was like summer camp with magic. It's awesome.
There's nothing like, I went to the magic camp in Canada, Sorcerer Safari, and there's nothing that'll lock you into magic than being with. I remember my mom dropping me off at the bus, and there was like this girl that brought 2 bird cages full of birds, and I was like, I'm here, man. Like, this is crazy. So there's nothing quite like that. Obviously there's more of a gap to bridge here between like what you do now and saying like, okay, I want to do this professionally. Okay, it seems possible. It seems like, what did you do? Did you start doing birthday parties? How did you go from there?
I did. Yeah. I started, the first birthday party was my friend Shannon's 10th birthday party. And I did magic and got paid $25 and all the pizza I could eat. I was so stoked. And I just started, I got little business, my dad got me little business cards printed. And at first it was all my parents' friends, who'd be like, have me come and do close-up magic at their gatherings and stuff. And I just started saying I was doing it, and pretty regularly was doing other kids' birthday parties and a lot of weird scenarios, because, when you're starting out, you say yes to everything. Yeah. And so, yeah, probably a lot of places I shouldn't have been performing that I ended up. Was there a turning point where you found a way or a route to start doing this? Because now you're on bigger stages and corporate audiences and things like that. Like, was it an agent that found you? Did you start running ads or something? Like, how did you get to this? I have kind of 2 career paths in magic. When I first started out and I got involved in the Junior Society, Diana Zimmerman, who ran the program at the time, she gave a lecture one day, and there's 2 things that stand out to me. One, she told us all, there's something very strange about you all, and you need to understand this. Most people don't want to stand in front of a crowd and pick up a microphone. And the fact that you're excited about doing that, just realize that you're in a different mindset than a lot of people.
Yeah.
The second thing she said is never say you can't do something. So she said if somebody wants you to do something and they got a budget for it and they want to give you the opportunity, say you can do it and figure it out later. And that week I booked my first illusion show, and I didn't own any illusions. And it's just one of those things of like,
awesome.
Could you do something with our CEO? Oh yeah, we can make them appear. Great. And how much will that be? An extra $50. So I paid $100 to rent a prop to make an extra $50, but just figured it out. And I had kind of a diversion from magic for many, many years. I worked at a church as a youth pastor, which you knew the second you saw my face. Doesn't watch off. But I had grown up in a place where I was just always put my hand up to volunteer, and eventually ended up taking a role on staff at a church. For about 13 years, I did that while performing magic. Wow. Still doing about 60 or 70 shows a year. And then 11 years ago, I left that season of life and have been doing magic full time since. So kind of had 2 starts in magic, because the last year that I worked for the church, I had quit performing completely. Like, took down my website, changed my phone number, was just trying to figure out, am I supposed to be doing this career or am I supposed to be doing magic? And so for a year, didn't do it at all. And then when I started back up, was like starting back from scratch. So, I mean, first of all, that's wild. It's a wild story. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, like, magic pause. I know I've had those early on, as a teen, being like, let me stop this for a minute. And then, you pick it back up, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. With both of these, I think what I'm curious about is like, what was there a proactive element? Like, you take your website down, you stop doing shows for a year, then you're like, I'm back. And like, what do you do? Do you like call every past client? Do you like post on social media? Like what did you do then to make it get to 75 shows a year the first time, but then also the second time? Yeah, so that and this is there's no way to get into this whole story, but and I have a 75-minute solo show with no magic in it, just comedy storytelling called The Last Sermon, where I kind of walk through this whole experience. But when I started back up, I had literally sold all my props. I didn't even have a prop. I didn't have a contact. I had been out of the business for a year, so friends had kind of forgotten that I was doing it. And the first step was I just called buddies who I knew were still in the game. And I was like, I will do anything. Like, it was literally one of those scenarios where it's like, I got to put food on the table. We had 2 little kids, and I will do anything. And also I called some friends and was like, can I borrow a Vanishing Ketchup bottle? Do you have a spot card? Like, I literally was just trying to reassemble an act at the beginning of it. And then again, going back to when I started performing again, what was wild is I didn't have a lot of things like contacts. I didn't have, props. I didn't have all this stuff, but I also didn't have all the nonsense that I had attached to performing before that, like worried about what other performers thought, worried about, kind of like the imposter syndrome that we can deal with. By giving magic up for a year, that was all gone. And so I was just like, I have no choice but to
be really practical about this, to build a show and not fiddle with tricks or whatever.
Yes. And also, like, I stopped being so precious about things. I think one of the good things about being creative is we really care about our ideas and our projects, and we want to do the best we can. And I think we absolutely should. But I also think magicians tend to polish things to the point where they're not good anymore. Mm-hmm. And so that was, I was just, there was kind of a fire lit under me of like sink or swim. It's either this or get a job at Target, but the family needs to eat and we got to pay the bills. And so that kind of changed the whole way I approach magic. And now, just try to make projects I care about and put them out.
So I want to talk about a couple of things you just said. I really love that phrase of polish until they're not good anymore. I'm curious about that. But just to sort of ask another flavor of this question one more time, was the answer like you just called everyone you knew and you called in every favor and you just got back to it? Was there anything else that you did, or it just sort of happened with enough like calling magicians and friends and colleagues and comedians and whatever and just saying like, what do I do? And it just sort of showed up.
Yeah, starting out the gate, it was just kind of screaming from the rooftops that like, I am back, I'm performing, I want to work. And then I started looking, I mean, this is wild because I haven't thought about this in a while. I mean, this was 11 years ago, but I literally would go on, back then I would go on Craigslist and I would see what events are happening. Because, they would always advertise the local golf tournament.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to reach out to these people and say, do you have somebody who's doing entertainment? Do you have someone who's an MC? I literally started cold calling.
Great.
And I stumbled into, for a few years, I did a lot of golf tournaments, which if anyone's looking for a market that is 90% untapped, golf tournaments is a great place for magicians to work because people coming off the course in shifts, right? So there's the people that were out on the golf course all day long and they just want to find out if they want a raffle prize, eat some dinner and go home. But then all these things are fundraisers. And so they're selling a ticket to people who weren't there all day and they need to get value out of their bucks. So if you can come in and be like, hey, I'll MC a raffle, I'll do close-up magic in that weird, awkward time as we're waiting for everyone to come off the course. I'll do the introductions for people. You can have a pretty solid business as a MC for golf tournaments because they're happening at every golf course.
That's awesome.
5 days a week.
It's great advice, and also it sounds like the answer to like how you got sort of back up on your feet in magic is just through like hustle. Like this is my only thing. I don't have a backup plan. This is what I'm doing. Calling friends, opening up Craigslist, calling like just whatever. Whatever you can do to get there.
And in those first couple of years, I did everything. I mean, I sold squirmal, the squirmal worms that I would do those in a Svengali pitch at like street fairs. And I did everything just to pay the bills while I kind of figured out what kind of show I really wanted to do.
Awesome. So let's talk about, I want to talk about, the show that you really want to do, which there's a lot of that I want to talk about. I just want to stop and ask about that quote of they polish things until they're not good anymore. What do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of my philosophy of magic is seeing the things I love about magic and then seeing the things that don't work or wouldn't work for me about magic. And I luckily grew up going to the Magic Castle as a teenager and getting to see amazing performers. I mean, you're talking like some of the greats you could get to see in person. It was unbelievable. And then 5 years later or 10 years later, I'd go back up to the castle and see those same performers doing the same act. And unfortunately, most magicians, so I've got a lot of my entertainer friends are comedians. A lot of my entertainer friends are magicians. The comedians are like, create an hour, polish that hour, and then film or record that hour, put it out, and then start over.
Yeah.
And so what happens is they work with this idea of like, this is not going to live forever, but I want it to be the best version of it I can. And then when it gets to be the best version I think it can, I'm going to film it and put it out. And unfortunately, I think as magicians, like magicians tend to do a 45 or an hour, and they're going to do that 45 or an hour for 30 years. And just the way storytelling works, the way presentations worked, after a while, you get tired of hearing your own words, and it loses a little bit of the gusto. Like, if a band only ever wrote 5 songs, they're going to get sick of it. The audience is going to get sick of it. And I think magicians, I think we're a little too precious with stuff. And we will do a routine until like it loses what made that routine good in the first place.
That's so awesome. That's such an interesting context because like, there's, I forget the exact name of it, but it's like, the plight of the artist or something like that, which is you work on this thing and by the time it's done, you are so much better than that thing that you made that you don't really like it because you learned so much about art and creating whatever that now you're like, this is not my best work. And like a lot of magicians then just sharpen that instead of at some point starting fresh, which is, I think, such a refreshing context. And just talking about the practicality, like, a lot of the way that magicians do what we do is people hire us and love us. And then they're like, can I bring you back? And you're like, it's the same show. You can't really bring me back, like, so in terms of practicality, like, if you're going to be in magic for a 30 or 40 year career, like you probably want to make a second act or a third act or something in that time,
Yeah, well, and the fact that whether your act is changing or not, you are growing as a human, right? So, I mean, how many performers have you seen that had a great act when they were 20, but now they're in their 40s and they've got kids and a family and, they're dealing with the different issues and they're still playing the character they were where they were like a young, fun 20-year-old. And it's like, it doesn't fit you anymore. It's like wearing clothes that you've outgrown. And it doesn't mean it's not good. I just feel like there's so much more that you can be discovering if you view a little bit of your like that this is all temporary and I'm gonna, enjoy it while it's here and then I'm gonna let it go. You'll find really cool stuff. And the performers are great. They just, they built a really creative act 20 years ago and then haven't used that creative element.
Well, that was the last thing I was going to say about this that I really like is, we all kind of in some way, shape or form got into magic because we like magic and making and playing and writing and doing. And like, at some point, if you don't change your act, you stop getting to do all that stuff. You stop thinking about new tricks and writing new things and coming up with new bits and you just stop doing that because you have your 45 minutes. So it's a great thought. It's a great angle. Your sort of specific style of magic, one of the things that jumps out to me so much is that it is really a lens of, speaking, storytelling, a lot of these elements that make their way into it is what makes it memorable and makes it resonate and makes it different. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it looks and feels a little bit different than most magic feels like. And, I think some of us are uncomfortable talking for 8 straight minutes on stage without doing a trick. and even knowing how to write something like that. So can you talk a little bit about, why that's what it looks like for you?
Yeah, for sure. So let's see, 11 years ago, we're coming up on the 11th year anniversary of me doing magic full time. And for the first 4 years of that time, I was just doing stuff that I had done, bits that I had done since I was a kid that worked. And my wife, one day, we're driving home from a party with friends and we had a great night. And she goes, "Why don't you do that on stage?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And I had just been sharing a funny story. There was a personal thing that happened. She's like, in your shows, you're doing really fun magic and it's, strong magic, and you're doing funny jokes, but they're not personal. You're not sharing any of you in the show. And I started thinking about it and I realized, oh my goodness, she's absolutely right. Like it wasn't a bad show, but you could literally hand it to another performer and it would be the same experience for the audience. They didn't leave at all. So I started thinking, what do I want the audience to leave thinking about? And at first I said, I want people to leave going, I'd like to grab a drink with that guy. Like I want people to go like, I'd like to get to know that guy. And now my thought process with everything is, if I do a good job during the show, they will feel like we just did. So like people will leave the show going, I got to know him, he got to know me, and I like this guy. That is what I kind of based everything off of. And so I started by just taking one story, and this ended up being on my first special that's on Amazon. It's called Chasing Wonder. But the story of being a kid and messing up the magic milk pitcher and pouring milk all over this girl at a party. I just took this story and I started thinking, how could I tell this as a piece on stage? And at first I thought, well, maybe I'll do the magic milk pitcher and I'll tell the story. And then I went, no. I'm going to write the story without performing. And I'm just going to try to make it as funny and as relatable as possible. And then later I'll add in a magic trick to it. And I told it for the first time on stage, and something different happened. All of a sudden, the audience was like leaning in a new kind of way. And I realized, I've been a fan of the Moth podcast, the Moth Radio Hour, where it's just true stories told without notes, these kind of transformational stories. I've been a fan of that for years. And I realized, there's a difference when you're at a party and someone walks up to you with a deck of cards and they're doing a trick for you. And then a friend comes up, one of their friends comes up, they go, "Oh, I'm so sorry, thank you, but my buddy's here." And they will stop watching your magic, to talk to their friend. But if you're telling somebody a story at a party and their best friend in the world walks up, they go like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here. Hold on one second. What were you saying?"
Yeah.
People want to hear the end of a story. And they just connect in a different way. And so I stopped thinking about what tricks do I want to do. And I started thinking about, what do I want to say to the audience? And now that's 100% of how I come up with routines. I never go like, "Oh, I really like this routine, I want to do that." I go, what do I want to tell people? Whether it's a funny story, a personal thing, something to get them to think about life. And then what trick will justify me doing that? And that's how I build the show now. It never starts with the magic.
First of all, I love it. I think it's great. It's a kind of thing that I hear, more and more often. I think that there's two things that I want to comment about it and ask more. The first thing to comment is, I really like that you are not hoping that, or in the instance that you gave me, you're not hoping that they want to leave knowing something about the world or understanding, the idea of like, I want them to want to have a drink with me or feel like they just had to take a drink with me, is a nice version of that. My question, which that itself may answer, but just to like dig in, and I ask this to everybody on the podcast that says you want to express more you and you want to tell them something and whatever. The question is, I'm a 19-year-old guy who just finished high school and I'm now doing my act, and someone tells me, you got to express you got to tell them something. What do you want to tell them? And I'm going like, do I possibly have to tell them? And whether you're listening to this and you're a 19-year-old guy or a 45-year-old guy or whatever, I think that feeling persists of being like, what does little old me have to tell the world? Or like, so how do you sort of answer that? How would you help someone that's struggling with the like, and what do I have to say?
Oh, this is so good. I think sometimes when people start thinking this way, their thought process is, oh, I don't have anything to teach anyone. The goal is not to teach anybody anything, because you're absolutely right. Most performers who fail, especially in like an MC capacity, they're speaking to a room of 60-year-olds and they're 20, 30 years old, and they're trying to act like the authority over that group.
Yeah.
And that will never work. The thing is, though, everybody deals with the same issues. They deal with insecurity. They deal with wanting to feel motivated about life. They deal with wanting to feel valued, right? Those are universal things that if you're 19 years old, you may not know what it's like to be the CEO of a company, but I remember what it's like to be 19. And so if you can remind me what it was like to be young, like if I was talking to a 19-year-old, I'd be like, don't try to position yourself as like, oh, this is all the wisdom I've gained in my 19 years. I would try to remind them what it was like to be a young kid trying to figure out life and not having all the answers. And ironically, a 60-year-old who's been running a company for 30 years will relate to that and go like, I still don't have all the answers. So it's not about trying to go, how can I teach somebody something? It's trying to find the universal things that are a part of your very personal experience. And so the best thing you could do as a young kid who's trying to like share your viewpoint or your perspective is not to be like, oh, I got to learn some cool thing to pass on to somebody. Just share that you are currently learning. Talk about the things that you're trying to figure out. Talk about the things that you're wrestling with or you're wondering about. And sometimes I was talking to one guy recently who was struggling with like, oh, I feel like people are not going to respect me, or they're not going to listen to me, or they're not going to book me. And it's like, no, remind people of what they've forgotten about. Because at a certain point they thought I got it all figured out, and now they realize they haven't, and they're looking for something. So yeah, I think the best thing we can do is share like our personal life with people in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
But I think there's what else do you have to share but your own experience?
There's two things about that jump out to me, and I really appreciate what you're talking about, because I think it is helpful, because it for me, it sends me in two ways. The first way is that like what we're looking for is not something to teach, but what we're looking for is something that at the core of it, people can relate to. So there's a part of it that maybe they can't relate to. That's the part that's really unique and about you. But at the core of it, the theme, the idea, the whatever, it's not about telling them, I believe this is the way it is, or I believe it's not like that, or I believe it's like this. It's just about being like, look, it happens to me too. You know, I heard a speaker say, the only thing more powerful than someone's, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but it's like, the only thing more powerful than someone saying like, oh, I get that feeling is, or I understand that feeling, is to be like, that happens to more than me. Like, is them going like, oh my gosh, that happens to you too. Like, we're both experiencing that thing. So I think that's the chord that you're talking about plucking, which is the chord of like, all we're really hoping to do is to make a connection over a theme, topic, moment, experience, whatever. Am I understanding correctly?
Absolutely. Ray Romano, who wrote Everybody Loves Raymond, great writer. When he was writing that show, that show is based on Ray Romano's life, but most of the stories are from Phil Rosenthal. Did I say Ray Romano? Ray didn't write it. Phil Rosenthal wrote Everybody Loves Raymond. Most of those stories are about Phil's family.
Yeah.
And he's like, when he was writing it, he was like, no one's going to relate to this because this seems so weird. My parents are overbearing and they live next door. My brother's, this weird dude who's always, jealous of these things. And he realized the more personal he made it, the more universal it became. And people would come up to him and be like, that episode you wrote, that's exactly my family. He'd be in Russia and people would be like, oh, our family's just like that. He's like, what do I have to relate to someone who lives in Russia? And yet we all as humans have these experiences. The problem with magic sometimes, one of the fatal flaws of magic is that to do magic well, you're showing somebody something that you have achieved a skill that they don't have, and you're not willing to tell them how you achieved it or what you're doing. So the very nature of magic pushes us away from the audience. It's look what I can do that you can't do. And so the more you can share relatable stories that make them go like, oh, he gets it. Like he knows what it's like to be me, or to struggle with this thing, or to wonder about this thing, or to be embarrassed because you do this stupid thing at the grocery store. There's so much great stuff in there in storytelling that can pull the audience back in and open them up to when you do something amazing. They don't feel like it's some guy trying to show off. It's like, oh, this guy that I like can also do this thing that made me feel something. Totally makes sense. And I think, you've mentioned the word a couple times now, but based on what you just described of like sharing a part of you that makes other people at least notice it or relate to it in some way. And again, it takes such a big weight off of what we're trying to do, which is that like, I'm not trying to share a message. I'm just trying to get someone to connect to it in some way. Like, so that takes a big weight off. But as we describe it in that way, all signs start pointing to storytelling, because the way to share a part of yourself that people can relate to is through stories. A lot of your stuff, like we sort of open this sort of segment with, is, are very story heavy. And how would you, first of all, how does one go about writing a story? Or even more than that, like, how does one go about reaching into their bag of experiences to pull out the stories? What advice do you have for someone trying to do that? Yeah, so I'll give you kind of first of all, if you sit down to write and you struggle with writer's block, here's the number one thing that has helped me never have writer's block, is I've separated my brainstorming what I'm going to write about from my actual writing time. So I keep a list at all time on my phone. I have 2 lists running. I have joke premises, like things that I think are funny, unique, interesting. Well, the thing I noticed, observations. They're not jokes. They're just thoughts or things that either I find relatable or interesting, and I keep them on a list on my phone. When I sit down to write jokes, I just grab that list and I pick one and I start writing about that topic. So I'm never sitting there going, what am I going to write about? And the same thing with stories. Like if you took 5 minutes today and you said, I'm just going to write down memories that stand out to me. These are probably things that you end up talking about in conversation already, or things that you bring up when you're hanging out with friends, or thoughts that you're just constantly reminded of when you smell that certain smell. It reminds you of your grandma's house when just write down basically things that are not stories. They're just moments that are unique and memorable. And then if you want a real basic structure, sit down and pick a story and go, this is what was happening right before this moment. This is what I thought about this scenario. This is what my life was like before this. Then this is what actually occurred. That's when you write the memory. And then this is what existed afterward. Almost every great story has that arc of like, here's the world that existed before, then this thing happened, and now there's this new perspective or experience, or, I thought I wanted this, then this happened, then I realized I wanted something different. And if you want to deep dive into that, The Moth just put out a great book this year called How to Tell a Story by the Moth Radio Hour. And it's fantastic. And it's literally 5-minute stories that are, here's what I thought, then this happened, now I thought something different. Here's what I wanted, then this happened, now I wanted something different. So, and I don't think that everybody needs to do long form stories, but I do think to be original in magic is such a big thing we talk about. I want to be original. I want to, stand out and be different. Well, your life is so unique and different from anyone else's life. The more of your life you can put in your show, originality is just going to be a byproduct of it.
Yeah, it sounds like, first of all, coming up with stories is more action than rocket science, you just have to have a list of stories. You have to be actively putting these things together and have this running list. And then all of a sudden these things start to go like, that actually is a really good one, like that one really resonates, or that has something in it that like, I kind of feel good about sharing or talking about, which again, like really just takes the weight off of trying to do this. Because again, not everybody needs to be a storytelling magician, but I think almost all of us could do for more us in our magic. And like, that's the part of this that really resonates, which even if it's not a story, but it's a joke or a moment or whatever, like that stuff needs to come from you and your experiences. So,
100%.
And another part of this that really helps is when you think about writing a magic act, you kind of think of like sitting down, knowing 4 or 5 tricks and writing, but like really what it is plucking a handful of things from the bank of things that, you know, you already have set aside in some way and starting to put them together.
Yeah, for sure. Charlie Fry is probably the greatest juggler. Charlie Fry is a juggler who is also the greatest magician on the earth. And I heard him say, I don't even remember who he was talking to about this. My buddy Mark James told me about this first, but he said, Charlie Fry goes, someone asked him, are you worried about people stealing your act? And he said, if you're capable of stealing my act, go for it. Like he has leaned so into skill that for someone to steal the act, they have to develop the skill, which is brilliant. I'm not that kind of performer. But here's what I realized is if I as a magician, who most people consider magicians liars, if I just make the choice that I'm going to tell true stories on stage, someone could rip me off, but they've got to
tell my
able
story. Like,
yeah, you got to be able to tell my story from my childhood. And I can't tell you how many times people come up to me and go like, well, you're a really good actor. I'm like, no, I just tell the truth.
This is really what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I just, and yes, you can write things in a way that make the story better and more condensed and people can follow. And, you took 2 people and you combined them into one character because they didn't need to know the difference. But the thing is, the more you put of yourself in your show, again, the more original you be, and the less you have to be worried about magicians stealing your material, because it's like, well, you can't, someone else can tell a Bill Burr joke.
Yeah.
Nobody else is Bill Burr. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, of course. And I think, again, like an act being less stealable, aside from the fact that that's like a nice bonus, just means that it is more authentic and more real and more you and more of the stuff that you do. So I think that really resonates. I want to talk a little bit more about, you were talking about comedians and how comedians do an act and then they work on it and they tour with it and they put it out and then they start fresh and then it's that weird, ugly thing again for a little while until it gets great. You've been somebody who has released specials both on like Amazon and on YouTube and on things like that, which is pretty unique in the world of magic. And I know magicians are like afraid about like putting their stuff out so like the client can watch the whole thing. And also it's just, can you talk a little about like what the impetus is behind this? Like why are you releasing specials like comedians do?
Yeah. So so I always wanted to do it. I think we all have this idea of someday I'm going to make something that I'm proud of and excited about. In 2019, I was sitting in a cafe in Nashville with my buddy Vance, and he's a musician friend. We see each other a couple times a year. And I'm sitting in this cafe and he asked me this, he looked at me and asked this question that literally changed the course of my career. Is he goes, what's one thing you need to do, but you just haven't done it? And I started pitching this idea of, I want to do a comedy magic special. It's going to be like when Harry Anderson did his show. And
by the way, just sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You literally told us the format for a story and then you did it. You told us, here's the beginning, here's the moment. And now I changed forever because of it. So awesome. That's funny.
So yeah, he goes, what do you want to do that you haven't done? And I say, I want to make a comedy magic special. And here's how I'll shoot it. And this is what it'll look like. And we'll have vintage footlights on the stage and all this. And he listened, eating his breakfast while I told the story. And after I'd ran it for about 10 minutes, he goes, we sat in this exact booth a year ago and you told me this exact thing. So when are you going to do it?
Oh, wow.
And then I immediately started coming up with excuses. Well, that takes a lot of money and I don't know how to do it and where would I shoot it and all this. And he goes, no, take out your phone. And he had me take out my phone and he goes, when is the next time you have a week on your calendar with nothing happening? And this was August of 2019. And I was like, January. Little did I know there'd be a lot of time after that. And I said, January, first week of January, I don't have anything going on. He's like, hold on. And he bought a ticket on Delta and he said, I'm flying to LA. I'll be there that whole week. Now you have to do it. And that is why I filmed my first special.
Wow.
I didn't have the money to do it. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have a venue. And then I just went, well, my buddy's coming to help me. I got to make it happen. I guess I'll find a venue. I'd been working shows at Dynasty Typewriter in LA, this killer venue I loved. And I was like,
great.
I know them. Maybe they'll let me do it there. Sure enough, I called them. They're like, yeah, cheers. So then I went, well, who do I know that films? Well, I do corporate events, and I have this friend who films all these corporate events that we're at, and he does these crash edits, and he's great at getting shots, and I just like the stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to call him and see, like, could we figure this out? How would this work, and what would it cost? And literally just that was how the first one got made, because a buddy said, well, what do you need to do? And he called me on it when I was giving him BS about why I couldn't do it.
Well, first of all, just a great story and a great little lesson that, like, that's usually, what we need is just the, hey, what's the thing you need to do? And, like, just go do it. And great. That's, that's all you needed, is someone to tell that to you. What was that, or was there a result of that special that made you say, oh man, I got to do this more?
Yeah. So when I made the first special in January, we filmed it in January of 2020, then the pandemic hit. And being a performer was like being a dentist if teeth didn't exist. And at first I was like, what have I done? Like, I spent so much money making this thing. However, we had gotten a deal, got the special put on Amazon. And so now when everything went virtual, and I was set up, I had the studio set up already for virtual stuff. When everything went virtual, now I had a credit to my name that nobody else doing corporate events had, right? So every corporate client, we'd ask them, hey, how did you make the decision of who to go with? Well, all these guys do comedy, all these guys do magic, all these guys work the Magic Castle. This one has a special on Amazon. So having that credit, that Amazon deal, I did not make my money back from having that. I made it back in booking corporate events at a higher rate and at a higher, more consistently, because it was like, oh, it's a no-brainer. Every client is just paranoid that they're going to book something that doesn't work, of course. And now, not only is it like, well, he's got a show on Amazon, clearly it must be good, but now that they can watch an entire hour of what I do, and there's no question about it. And I think something clicked there where I realized most of my life as a magician has been like, I don't want to put material out. I don't want people stealing it. I don't want to burn it for the clients and the audience. But then I realized it's like being a band that's really good that never puts out an album, and then being mad that nobody knows about you.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody loves you as a corporate performer and they want to tell their friends, well, how can I see him? I guess you got to wait till he shows up at your conference. Mm-hmm. Like, there's most magicians who we know of have zero digital footprint as far as like actually. And so what do? We film videos of doing close-up magic when we're a stage guy.
Everything but the thing.
Yeah. And so I was just like, oh, and yet my comedian friends were like, hey, here's me doing what I do. Yeah. People fall in love with that. They buy a ticket to a show. So I just went, that's the new game plan. And also once I put that out, I was like, well, I have to assume, I mean, obviously, not everyone has seen it, but I have to assume if someone books me that they saw it. Yeah. So now I have to do different things. And last week I was in Kansas doing a keynote at night, and I had agreed to go to, there's a sponsor for this program that was happening. So I was going to go to the company that was sponsoring this show that I was doing at night. And I thought, well, I'm doing the new act. I'll do some old stuff for the client during the day. And I walked in and they had 30 of their staff in the conference room eating lunch, watching my special on YouTube. And I went, okay, great. Got to do something different.
Yes,
but that has been the biggest breakthrough as of late is like, oh, I did this because it was something I wanted to do, make a special. And then I went, well, this is the best advertising ever. Like, most of us spend so much time explaining what we would do if someone hired us. But now when people call to book me, I don't have to sell them on anything.
Yeah.
They're calling because they already saw it.
Exactly. That's awesome. And again, it is such head and shoulders above what magicians tend to do. And like, again, it's so funny that the business model of magicians is like, it's a mystery what I possibly do on that stage. Like, people book me because either they saw me or they're taking a gamble. And like, a promo video goes so far, but not as far as watching you do your act. But of course, it requires a level of artistry and discipline to put out an act and then basically throw it all out and start again halfway through your career and or whatever. And then I guess it's a little bit different because you were, it was in COVID. So like we all kind of invented a new act in COVID. But can you talk about like what that ugly moment is like when the act is out and it's out on YouTube and now you're like, start again? Like what do you do there? How do you start? Is there already like all these tricks and ideas and stories percolating, or are you just like staring in front of a blank Google Doc and going like, what now?
Yeah. So it's terrifying, number one, but I always am writing. So I'm writing things now that I'm not doing right now. Like in 2020, I also, during COVID, I had always wanted to write a book, and I thought about what my buddy Vance said. And I went, well, I wanted a special, and then I just said I was going to do it. And so I wrote my first book during COVID. But the only way that happened is I said, okay, I'm going to sit down. I know if I try to do this sometime during the day, something's going to distract me, or the family's going to need me, or things are broken in the house, and I got to fix something. So when is my uninterrupted time? And I went, well, nobody is like up and awake till 8 o'clock in the morning around here. I'm going to wake up at 5 every single morning, and I'm going to sit I'm in a tough shed in my backyard. It's my little home office. I'm going to sit in there for 3 hours every day. And I either write 1,500 words or I have to sit in the chair. If I sit in the chair for 3 hours and only get 5 words on the page, that still counts. I'm not going to judge that. But that's how the book got written. And it's the same thing with writing material for a show. I'm just always writing ideas and working on stuff, knowing that what I'm doing on stage right now is not going to be what I'm doing 2 years from now. So when I filmed the new special that came out, Enjoy the Ride, that's on YouTube, when that came out, we had filmed it 6 months earlier. And by the time it came out, I had already been rotating bits into the show.
Got it.
So half the show was already new. And then when it came out, I just slowly started. And what's great is I'll still, like for corporates, I do old stuff. Like there's just certain routines. It's like, this is going to be great for this keynote, or this is perfect for the theme of this event. So it's not like you're burning it forever.
It's okay. Like if your act has 6 tricks and one of them is in its special that people may or may not have seen, like it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Totally. Yeah. But if you do the exact same act and people love it and they go, I want to bring a friend to see him the next time he comes to town. And then they see it, they'll enjoy it, seeing it again, but they won't buy a ticket after that. They're not going to come back. So yeah, I think just committing yourself, giving yourself deadlines, and treating the writing as a job. Like no one sees that stuff. That's you literally waking up and going, hey, all right, I get on a plane tomorrow. Today I'm going to spend 3 hours writing. But it's funny.
It's funny what you just said about doing that same stuff. I heard this quote from maybe it was Jimmy Carr. I'm not sure, but I thought it was brilliant. He said, if you're a band and someone buys a ticket to your concert and you don't play the hit, they'll never come back. If you're a comedian and they go and you say the jokes they already know, they'll never come back. So it's like the exact opposites, which is like a comedian. It's like, you're not gonna surprise me with this laugh a second time, but the band, it's like, we're coming to see the song, like play the song, so just funny the way our industry is.
I've had friends. I mean, I've argued with buddies who have been like, well, magic's harder than writing jokes. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, we wake up every day and Vanishing Ink and Penguin are like, here's 12 new ideas. Yeah. So I just think there's so much great magic out there. Why not even if you're like, hey, I don't want to burn my act. What if you created stuff just to put online that is, a lot of us are upset about like exposure on the internet. People are watching it because they like magic. Like make something that scratches that itch that's better. And then, there's side benefits of it. My last 3 keynotes I booked were not because I had a great website or a demo video. It's because people found me on Instagram and they went, oh, this guy does stuff that's entertaining and he says stuff that matters. What if we had him at our conference?
let's talk about that, because you have at least one very, very viral video that has popped off. I'm sure others as well, but one that is like used and stolen and this and that. It is everywhere, you know, on the internet. And it's a fantastic piece of magic and a fantastic story. And is that like a, hey, everyone, you should try to make a video of your act go viral? Is that something, or is it just happened? Or like, can you talk a bit sort of about that?
So first of all, I mean, and I do think that it's a fun routine, but I'm also like, why did that one? Why is that the thing that popped up? And this goes back to like, nobody knows what's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. Like, The Rock is the #1 movie star in the world, and he's having to go do podcasts and TV shows right now because he doesn't know if anyone's going to come to his new movie. Like, nobody knows what people are going to care about. Here's what we do know. If you don't put anything out, nothing ever happens. So when I filmed my first special and we put it on Amazon, that was great. And it had like cachet to it. And it did really well, especially during COVID. But nobody can see those numbers.
Yeah.
It's not like you put it on YouTube and everyone can see how many watch hours it's got, you know? So when I put the second one out on YouTube, I was a nervous wreck because I'm like, oh man, is this like a bad idea? But I just thought, you know, not everyone has Amazon, not everyone has Netflix. Everybody can access YouTube all over the world. And so I thought that distribution's a good idea. And I put it out, and for the first couple of weeks, it had like 1,200 views. And I was like, golly, man, like you're doing the math of how much money you paid per view.
Yeah.
People, and then I was bummed for a minute, and I was like, no, like you can't judge what happens with a project. You just got to make something, put it out, make something else. And then I decided to clip up the special and put it on Instagram. And I was bored one day on a flight, and I made that video and I posted it right before I got on a flight for 6 hours. And when I landed, it had like almost 1 million views. And I was like, what the heck? And now, yeah, like you said, it's been stolen and all this stuff. And at first I was all upset. Oh, people are stealing my video. And then I was like, wait, no, they're advertising my special. So I just started messaging these guys and being like, hey, I'm so glad you're making money off of this. Could you just go watch Enjoy the Ride by Taylor Hughes on YouTube? And that all of a sudden now the special's got a bunch of views on YouTube, which is great. And again, you know, the more eyes on it, the better. But then also from a marketing perspective, for years, I was the guy who was like, I don't want to put stuff on social. It's the weird game and all of this. Think about this. You spend a ton of money making a demo video. You send it out. You hope that the client watches it. You hope they like it enough to show it to the rest of the people. You hope those people like it. And then you hope that the decision makers are willing to take the risk to pay you your rate to come out. And the whole time, the event planner is hoping, are other people going to like this? Mm-hmm. Or you can put a video on Instagram and they go, oh my gosh, look how many people like this.
Yeah.
Like now you've taken the risk away from them because they can at least point to that. If you came and fell on your face, at least they can point to like, dude, this guy's got like, you know, hundreds of thousands of people sharing this.
People like it. Yeah.
People like it, and it takes the pressure off the client from it. So from a booking standpoint for corporate events, I think it's great. If you're trying to sell tickets in a theater, half my time is four-walling a venue, selling tickets in a town I'm not a part of, and helping people come out. You're going to have a small percentage of people that are in that city that saw you online. But what you're really going to have is people see, oh, there's a magic show. Then they go check out your Instagram or your YouTube, and they go, oh, other people like this. I might like it too. And they buy a ticket. So I think magicians, it's not too late to do it. Like all of this, like social media following for me popped off in the last year, but it's not too late to do it. You just have to put stuff out there.
I think it's really quite motivational about, you know, how to get seen and how to get noticed. I want to talk about the four-walling thing because, you know, when you rent the theater in a city that doesn't know you and all of a sudden you put down the $2,000, the $1,500 or whatever, and then tickets trickle in or they don't, and then you're like, okay. Just like high level, are you posting and tagging the city? Are you running ads? Do you have promoters? Are you just crossing your fingers and praying? What does it look like after you rent the theater and put up the poster to four-wall a city? Four-wall
So,
theater.
I mean, I think if you're in a city and you're going to pick a city and do it, there's a strategy. You know, you can really dial in Facebook ads to target that area. Yeah. If you're doing one-nighters, that becomes really challenging. What you need to do is you need to have some good material to point people back to. So I think you got to have either a killer video of what your show is, or, you know, something on social to point people back to, so that when they do see an ad, they go and look at that. I think, and again, all my ideas are borrowed from comedian friends. So I have a friend, Dave Nihill, who's a great comedian. We do Comedy Magic Club here a lot in LA. And I watched him start four-walling shows about 3 or 4 years ago. And I asked him one day, I was at the club, I was like, look, I'm just renting rooms. Like, I'm literally finding improv theaters that are closed on a Wednesday. I'm finding comedy clubs that want to add a show on a Sunday night. Like, but I feel like this is weird. Like, I feel like I'm faking it or something. Like, is this weird? I was asking him this a year ago, and he goes, dude, that's how everybody does it. That is how the entire business works. Every comedian that you see, even if they got a promoter, the promoter's reaching out to venues, they're booking the venues, and they're promoting and selling tickets. What he was doing is he would piggyback those with dates that actually made sense. And I started doing that. So long-winded way of saying it, basically what I'll do is I get booked for a corporate. I don't promote my corporate stuff at all on social media anymore. I'm never posting like, hey, here I am in the ballroom about to do the thing. I'm doing it every week, but I'm not posting about it, because I've found that posting that you have a platform outside of the corporate market is all you need to book to the corporate market. But it also works against you. If people want to come see you at a comedy club, they're like, this guy's doing like the tractor convention. Why would he come?
Yeah.
So what I started doing is going like, okay, great. I'm going to Pittsburgh to do a corporate event on a Wednesday night. They're not advertising that except in-house to their people, right? I'm not advertising it. It's not taking away from them if on Thursday I put up a show in a comedy club in Pittsburgh. So I let the corporate client book me, bring me out. I do the show for them. I'm already in town. My travel's 90% covered. I book another night at a hotel. And now I can test run a market that is, you know, I don't know if people are going to come or not. So I would say if you're interested in doing touring type shows, try to anchor it either with a corporate event, or sometimes I'll book a performing arts center that'll say, we'll give you your fee to come out for the night. We'll sell tickets. We'll kind of take that on. And then, you know, okay, I got a guarantee on Friday night at this event. I'll go, 2-hour drive from there and try another city in a little 50, 60 seater and just see what happens. And the only way to know is just to try it.
And when you four-wall a theater in Pittsburgh the day before a corporate show, are you running ads? Are you hoping that they promote it? Are you doing all the above? Are you what does it look like to get butts in seats in a city of people that don't know you?
It's different depending on, are you working with, like, if you're at a performing arts venue and they've got a mailing list, great. They're going to fill it up with people.
Yep.
If you're just booking a space, I do targeted ads through Facebook and Instagram. And then I work with the venue to go, what avenues do you have in the city to get the word out? If it's a lot of times they'll use like a little improv theater, and they've got a community on Facebook of improvisers that are in the area looking for stuff to do. They want to come see things that are different. And so I would just reach out to basically find anybody who I might know in the area. The other thing is your mailing list. If you're not growing a mailing list as a performer and tagging the city in which those people followed you, it's a great thing, because now if I go to Phoenix, I know I got 30 people on my mailing list who have seen me in person, who said, I want to stay in touch, that live in this area. So you pick that area and you email those people and you say, hey, I'm coming out on this day. Would you be able to bring some folks? I'd love to comp you if you could bring somebody with you. And now you're just starting to build a larger fan base through your
awesome. Yeah, it's great. It's great that, the actual tool belt of stuff is mailing list, ads, venue, and then, the killer one that goes back to what you're just talking about is like having the creative to give to them and to run ads against so that people like it. Because one of the things that you've said a few times on here, which I think is important, is that, you run an ad to a city or you have a video go viral or whatever, people are really nuanced. So some people just click an ad and buy a ticket, but most people sniff your butt a little bit. They go, they check out the page, they look some videos, they type you into Google, they type you into YouTube, they see what they can find before they go shell out $30 to go watch a show. And you need, that material does make a really big difference in people deciding that they want to come out and see your show or they want to tell their friends or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it.
And it is, it is a weird part of the business. It's trial and error. I did a run recently where I did in a weekend, I did 3 different states that were all within like a 2-hour drive. One of them sold out 250 seats instantly, packed out, great. The next night had like 37 people in a little tiny venue. The show was great. People had a good time. It becomes marketing, but you don't know. And if it doesn't exist, if you don't have things going on that when you do get that pop on social media and people go, we want to see this guy, but you don't have any dates on the calendar, it becomes a challenge.
Awesome. Really, really clear. The last thing I want to ask you about before we get to wrap up, and then a couple of cool ways people can find you, is, you really stood out to me at Magic Live during that youth show for your ability to MC, which is not easy. It's not easy for many reasons. You're generally not doing an act. Maybe you're doing a trick or something, but you're not doing an act. You have to learn about the people and say things about them. And you have to hold an audience in the in-between, which magic can sometimes be a long time as they're setting up the whole stage and in other industries as well. Obviously, there's a million things to talk about, but what kind of advice do you have for a magician who wants to get into emceeing? Because we have a lot of the right skill sets, but don't have any information on how to do it. What kind of tips do you have for magicians?
Yeah, I would say emceeing is the hardest show to book and the easiest show to rebook. Because nobody thinks when they're doing their checklist for a corporate event, they go, we got to have food, we got to have some tablecloths, we got to have an entertainer, we got to have some speakers. Nobody thinks who's doing the transitions. But when you think about great events you've been to, those events are great, not because of the individual elements, but because of the transitions. If the transitions are tight, if they're smooth, if things are on time, if it keeps flowing, people leave and go, it's great. So I think emceeing is one of the greatest tools for a magician who wants to add a secondary market. You have a client who calls you, we'll book you for a show. You can immediately upsell them to do an MC for them.
Yeah.
And now once they've had you do that and it goes well, they're going to want you to do that every single time. So I will say that I think emceeing is a untapped market that magicians could easily jump into. The biggest tip, and I already mentioned it a little bit, is the transitions. If you're an MC, your job is transitions. And so when you look at the schedule of an event and you go, great, this person's on stage, then they're going to show a video, then I'm coming up, and then we're doing this other activity. Most people will focus on what am I doing in the middle? And what you need to do is go, what is this? When it's being handed off to me, what environment are we in? And where are we going after that? And your job, you will get booked over and over if you can bridge that gap. So if I'm doing a fundraiser for a cancer charity, and they're going to show a video that is really touching, but really, it's sad, it's heavy, right? And I know that I'm going to come up and 3 minutes later, they have to go to lunch and not feel bad talking about the movie they just saw or the ball game. You need to do something in that moment to honor the moment you're in.
Yeah.
Not just abruptly go and here's a trick, but you got 3 minutes to honor that moment. And then either tell a story, tell a joke, or do a trick that transitions to the point where now they've been given permission to now go into a different moment. that is the key of being a great MC. And the other thing too would be like every story you have, every joke you have, every trick you have, create different versions of it. So here's what that trick looks like if I've got 2 minutes to do it. Here's if I got 5 minutes to do it. Here's if I got 10 minutes to do it. And knowing that in your head, because they might on a whim go, hey, we had a virtual speaker that their connection is bad. Go kill 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You got to know I've got this toolkit of things ready to go at a whim. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Those are kind of the big.
And I think, the reason why you did and do such a good job at it is that it shows that, you're not getting off, that you're not stepping on stage between the act and being like, what do I say now about that? Like you wrote it, and that's what this comes down to is like the advice is really the framing of it, which is you got to know where you're coming from and going to and what goes in the middle. But then you have to write it, like that. Yeah. That's the juicy part is
and to be adaptable too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, where we're going to land the plane. But if the speaker goes off beforehand, it does something weird. It's like recalculating driving directions. It's like, great, I thought we were going to be here, but now we're way over here. I still have to make sure we land the plane in this spot. And so, you write it ahead of time, but then you're also paying attention and like fully engaged to know what is really being handed to me. Yep.
And love it. Yeah. And it's so helpful because that's a lot of us musicians have those like improv-y skills, but again, like having a script and an act or whatever, it's what's laid upon, the stuff that you already have. We are getting towards the end of the podcast. There's a couple of questions that I ask people each time. And then last thing that I'd love to chat about. The first is, just sort of looking at modern magic. What's one thing you like about the world of magic right now and one thing that you don't like in the world of magic right now?
Oh my goodness. One thing I like a lot about magic right now, I see a lot of likable mentalism lately. And I don't mean to say that in a rude way, but I feel like, I've always joked that mentalism, on its onset is take magic, subtract likability and add procedure. And I'm noticing a lot of people do mentalism in a way that doesn't push people away, but is like kind of, they're getting creative about how they frame it. I saw my buddy David Stryker at the castle last night, and he is doing some things in his act that are just phenomenal. And you don't walk out of there going like, what's going on? What did I just experience? You just like in it from the get-go, the way he frames it. It's so good. So so I'm digging that. I've never really gotten into mentalism. I'm starting to play with some stuff a little bit more with that. I like that. What do I not like about magic? I feel like we talked about a lot of what I don't like about magic. I think so much of magic just stops at what's good enough. And the very nature of magic, a really bad magic trick can still be amazing. And so I think there's a lot of performers that think they're killing it because they're doing something that's interesting, but they're missing the point of why we do it in the first place. So I think magic could benefit from some more thoughtfulness, some more thinking.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love those both. The next is the endless chain. So in order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be a really good fit for this kind of conversation. There is 2 catches. The first catch is that I have not interviewed them already. And the second catch is that you have to be able to put us in contact. Who comes to mind for this kind of conversation that you think would be great?
Okay, so I mean, this is going to be tough because who do you leave out? Because I've got a lot of people I really love.
You can name a few. All good.
I will tell you, I think Mark James out of the UK. I don't know if you know Mark.
Amazing guy, amazing human, amazing magician, and I've never interviewed him. So already,
that guy,
you did nail it.
Oh my gosh, he's coming out in a couple weeks. We were doing the castle the same week together. His family's going to come out and stay with us beforehand. But awesome. So that guy, if you name any trick, he knows everything that's ever been done with it. And here's 5 new ideas to look at it. Like, he's a beast. So Mark out of the UK. And then my buddy Chipper Lowell. Have you talked to Chipper on here before?
I haven't spoken to him, but I saw him at the castle and I watched the show twice. I thought he was unreal. super funny, super entertaining. What a pro. He was a highlight for me.
No, another really great thing here. He directed my solo show, The Last Sermon, and he is just such a brilliant thinker about magic and grew up in the circus. So he has like a ton of wild experiences. His dad was a Ringling Brothers clown. His mom was an aerialist.
Whoa.
And he literally grew up on the circus train. So he's got a lot of just knowledge about the industry as a whole, and has done everything from theme parks to corporates to, his own theater show. So he'd be another great person to pick. Right.
Those are both fantastic. The last thing is not only where people can find you, but also you got a bunch of stuff for not only magicians, but non-magicians alike. You've got some books, some courses. Do you want to quickly tell us what they are and where people can find them?
Sure. Courses. I've had so many conversations with friends around a couple of topics. One is emceeing. One is just public speaking, tips on getting better on public speaking and storytelling. And then the other is on self-publishing books, because I've done that a couple of times now. And so I filmed a couple of, for lack of a better name, master classes around those topics. Yep. And so those are at learnwithtaylor.com.
Cool.
And you and I can come up with a catchy code name, but I'll make a code for the listeners here. What word should we use?
Great. I would say discourse, but it's kind of hard to spell. So just do Jonah, Jonah. I think that's easy.
Yep. So if you use Jonah over there, you'll get a crazy deal. We'll make it something that's like 75% off or something like that.
Awesome. Dude, that's wicked. Appreciate it.
And then I've got a couple specials out. I got Chasing Wonder on Amazon Prime, Enjoy the Ride on YouTube. I'd love it if you guys wanted to take a look at those. On Instagram and social, I'm at Magic Storyteller. And my very cryptic email, if I can ever be of help to you in any way, is taylor@taylorhughes.com. You would have never guessed it. But I love talking about magic. I love seeing people do cool stuff. And I don't usually have answers, but I tend to know people who do. So, yeah.
That is wicked. Taylor, thanks so much for being on this and answering questions and walking us through not only, your wacky, wild world of magic and storytelling and all that, but all the advice and all the stuff that you learn the hard way from doing it. I think this stuff is amazing and helpful and appreciative, and hopefully people were informed and affected, by it the way that I was. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, big thank you to everybody for tuning in and listening. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you next Thursday. Ciao, my friends.
Well, there you have it. I hope you learned something. I hope you liked it. And I hope that you share it and tell the world. Recently, a couple of these episodes have popped up on Magic Facebook pages, and people have really enjoyed it. And you know what? It helped more people find out about this thing and learn some amazing tips from some amazing people. So if you want other people to be awesome other magicians and you want to help spread the word about a free, awesome resource, tell one person about this podcast and it would mean the world to me, and even more to your fellow magician. Of course, if you want some help growing your business and booking epic gigs, you know where to find me, magic@torontoMagicCompany.com. Send me an email and we will see if I can help. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you next Thursday. Ciao!